going on, man?
Welcome. First podcast of October. I think this is podcast number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Last podcast we had Krista.
Yep.
She was great.
I'm enjoying these things.
She wants to do it again? Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to just sit down and kind of shoot the shit. And
I think Jill wants to come on next.
Yeah, and I think we should
Mix it up.
Bring in some outside people every once in a while. I really liked having Martin on. That was informative for a lot of people, I think.
I think there's been a few people we've talked to that want to come on. Yeah. October market's still a little slower than normal, but that's also kind of par for the course for the time of year too. Slower than normal, slower than the last.
It's funny though. Every time I think that though, then we were talking to one of our other team members, Zach, yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, there was 19 offers on that house that we wrote on, so that's still there."
Depends on the house, depends on the price range, the listing price. I think it's slowing down optically because some people are switching the strategy from the low price strategy to more accurate to what the house is worth. So I wonder if it just seems like it's slowing down because some houses are closer to what they're worth, and then they get only a few offers on them instead of 20 because they're not 200,000 under asking.
Yeah, again, it goes back to what your strategy is for listing a home. I mean, you can list it for. I still think we're going to start seeing people listing for like $1.
Didn't somebody just do that in
Windsor?
I think I heard that, but I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either.
I feel like it would have hit the news if it really happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was true or not. But someone in Toronto did it.
Someone in Toronto did do it. I showed that to you, I think, a few months ago.
What was the outcome?
I don't know. I don't know what the outcome was.
I'm going to look at the outcome.
It's an interesting thing to think about because, it's such a mental scramble for buyers when things are listed all over the place and they don't know which way is up. And this is the importance of working with a realtor when you're navigating a market like this, because we have a pretty good idea of what these houses are actually worth, and we've got to do our homework and figure out what it's worth. But when you list it like 100,000 less or 200,000 less, it gets in a buyer's head and they think, well, I don't want to have to pay $200,000 over the asking price, even if that's what the house is worth.
Right.
But what happens when you list a house for $1? The mental gymnastics kind of go out the window, because now that buyer knows they're not going to get the house for $1, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're going to lean on the realtor that they're working with a lot more to say, well, so then what is this house actually worth?
My concern with that is if mistakes are made and appraisers come into the equation. When you list something for $1, the opinions on what something can be worth subjectively, the field of view could be so wide. And when an appraiser comes in, that's one opinion. And if that appraiser's opinion is not in your field of view, then we're going to have a lot of issues on financing. That's just opening a can of worms. It's an auction at that point, obviously.
You're right. Yeah, it turns into an auction. That's exactly what happens. I don't know.
It looks here originally listed, the now unrecognized home in April for 1.4. It was
look at that thing.
Priced at $1 seemed laughable considering the state of real estate market. As it turns out, a recently renovated home. It was listed for exactly that. And did it say it went for 1.4 million?
That was what it was.
Could you imagine being like, I'm going to go 1.4 million over the asking price? Because the asking price is $1. So that's what you mean. The gymnastics are out the window because it's clearly not $1. So now you have to price it. And it makes me wonder how many people were at 1 or 1.1 because the house needed a shit ton of work. And to somebody, they might say 800, they might say 900.
This is an interesting topic as well. You'll always see things, and this is a prime example of it, this one you're looking at here, because it was a dilapidated house in Toronto. You'll always see those big stories pop up in the news that say, absolutely trash home in Toronto lists for, 700, gets $1 million. It's on like a 20-foot wide lot. It's this, it's that. And then everyone starts getting on the comment section on these news articles, and they're like, how could a piece of crap like that sell for $1 million? Like, what's going on in this market, in this world? And what people have to remember is that land is a finite commodity, and land in specific areas around the country is worth more than land in other areas around the country.
Right.
So when you look at a house that's completely falling apart in Toronto that's listing for that and selling for $1 million, it's not the house. You know, the person who's buying that isn't buying the house. They're buying a prime lot.
Well, sometimes
Toronto.
it might have sold for more if it was just the land.
Right. Because they've got to pay the demolition costs.
Right. If it's that condemned.
Right. So it's just, I've just found a lot. It's really with our clients or with my clients. You spend a lot of time having to kind of explain. Look, you know, throw any preconceptions you have about this out the window. Let me, you know, help your mind understand what's going on in this market, because it's not as Wild West as you think it is. It's just different strategies being used by different people to try to get the seller the amount of money that they think they should be getting for what that house is worth on the market today.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what it comes down to.
And everybody thinks, you know, to win this home I have to overpay. No, you just don't have to win.
Right.
Like we come in with a number that we believe it's worth. You put a hard stop. And if somebody pays more than that comfort level, either that your comfort level, there's two different levels. There's what the comfort level, what the market probably predicts it to be worth around and that you need to stay under. But there's also your comfort level. If somebody's just not comfortable going over a certain price, we're not going to tell you to go higher than your comfort zone. So if somebody goes and pays a crazy price for a home, the only way you're losing is either one, they paid more than the market suggests or more than you're comfortable spending. And at that point, you just say, okay, we have to move on. Yeah. And I think the whole predicting of what houses are worth, it all comes down to homework, statistics, numbers. And if you do your due diligence and you look at the market with your agent, you're going to be safe. You're going to be fine. But that doesn't mean you're going to win.
No.
And if you don't win, you're going to have to just kind of come in with the mindset that it's not yours until it's over. And if there's going to be losses and heartbreaks, and you're going to have to wean your way through the market and finally get something.
I feel like we could talk about this every single week. Yeah. And we usually do touch on it a little bit because it's the hot topic in the world right now, well, at least in Canada.
Yeah.
Because real estate is such a hot commodity and it's increasing at such a rapid rate. But you know, it takes a lot to derail that, and I don't personally see big things coming down the pipeline in the near future that will stop this train right now.
I think the morale of buyers is starting to go down a bit, and
yeah, that'll maybe curb some of the demand.
Yeah, I think that everybody's just kind of getting fed up with the market, the lack of supply, people trying their hardest to get a home. Some people have given up and they're like, you know what, I'm taking a break, and then they come 6 months back from their break, and the market has gone up, 10 to 15%. So now they're even more upset about how everything's going, and COVID is not helping.
No, and COVID, hasn't helped anything. Right? Like, we're still navigating this. Yeah. We're still navigating every other thing that comes along with it too. Like we were just talking about
the borders.
I can't figure out what's happening with the U.S. border, and because they just relaxed their travel restrictions internationally,
right?
Which means fully vaccinated people from other countries can fly into the United States as long as they have a negative test 72 hours prior and their vaccination status. And actually, we can fly into the States from Canada as well under the same rules.
But you have to fly.
But we can't drive across the border that's 15 minutes from my house. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone at this point can't really figure out the logic behind that. I don't know if it's a manpower thing. I don't know if they just don't want to be bothered having to deal with checking those things at the land borders. But I would argue that it's safer to cross the border in your own vehicle by yourself and come into the United States that way than it is to get on a plane filled with 250 people and arrive Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It just like you have to have the same things. You have to have your vaccination status.
I'm selfishly upset about it. I just want to go back to
yeah, that's the problem. Because I used to live in Toronto. I lived in Toronto for 8 years and I mean, things to love about it, you know, going to sport events, having, big shopping, having, tons of restaurants and bars and things to go to. I mean, Detroit has all of those things and it's literally on our doorstep. Like we are basically almost a suburb of Detroit.
Camping, golf,
right?
You name it, everything.
Concerts.
Pretty much everything that's fun.
Yeah, pretty much everything that's fun. Yeah. So, I mean, I just can't, and it's hurting them too. It's hurting these border towns. It's hurting something like Detroit, not just Detroit, but like, down by Niagara Falls, all these
Buffalo
major,
border.
Major border crossings, their tourism is being really,
it's crazy,
affected by this.
How much do you miss Bonnaroo?
Yeah, we were talking about this, but for those of you who don't know what Bonnaroo is, it's a giant music festival in Tennessee that happens every year in June, which is one of the hottest months of the year.
Except last year, I think it was September.
Well,
or something like that.
Yeah, they moved it so that this is the story. I started going to Bonnaroo in 2013 with some friends, and I went for the next 3 years consecutively. And I think, and this was before I knew you.
Yeah.
I think you were at all those same Bonnaroos.
I was. I went to 2011, 2013, 14, and 15.
Yeah, so I did 13, 14, and 15. And we didn't even know each other.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. But I actually went with some friends who were clients of yours.
Melissa and Jake?
Yeah, Melissa and Jake. So...
who are now clients of yours.
Who are now clients of mine. I miss that so much. Music festivals are another world, and
I'm thinking of the names that I saw there. I saw Neil Young.
Oh,
I saw Tom Petty.
Paul McCartney.
Elton John. Billy Joel.
Mumford & Sons. Jack Johnson. Yeah. Like you could go on and on.
All
and
the
on
way
and
to
on.
like Eminem.
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar.
Yes.
Like.
Yeah.
Macklemore. I think I saw Lil Wayne. Like it's so weird when you can go from Lionel Richie to Lil Wayne in a half an hour. Like the place is wild.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you're in the backwoods of Tennessee in Manchester, about an hour outside Nashville. So did you ever visit Nashville while you were down?
Yeah. I love Nashville.
So we would always go to Nashville for a day or two. Then we would drive down or like hitchhike basically to Manchester. The first time I went, we showed up in Nashville and me and my buddy had no idea what we were getting into. We had like, I think all our food, our shit, our tents, and our heat pods, our tents. We called Swift Services, and his guy name was Jeffrey Swift. And my aunt lives in Nashville, and we're staying at her place. And she's like, "Do you need a ride to Manchester?" I said, "No, Swift's driving us." And some guy named Swift picked us up and dropped us off at the Kangaroo Motel outside of Bonnaroo. And I remember like texting either my aunt or my mom or my wife now and saying, "We're all good. Just got dropped off by Swift at the Kangaroo Motel. I'll probably lose reception and talk to you in 5 days." And that was the last text they got from us. And we walked in. And I didn't realize how far still we had to walk in. And we were like holding all this stuff and all these vans of hippies are driving by. And we finally get in there and we pitch our tent in Tent City. Do you remember Tent City?
This is like, for those of you who can't really fathom this, Bonnaroo to me is like a modern day Woodstock.
Yeah. There's about 100,000 people. Yeah. It's really hot, but it's a dry heat. So we would put these little tents up in Tent City and we didn't realize we were so undersupplied. Our apples that we bought and brought
just rotted immediately.
They like boiled. we boiled our apples, and we would get out of our tents at like 6 a.m. and sleep on the side of our tent because it got so hot in our tents. We'd sleep on the side.
That was a common experience for all of us.
And then you would kind of like move around your tent as the sun would shift.
Well, see, we were pretty prepared when we went. Like we had like those easy up things that we made, because there was 4 couples, so there was 8 of us, and we had like this sort of central area that we had our tents all around.
Yeah.
And we laid out tarps in the middle, and we put up easy ups in the middle, and then but yeah, you'd have to get out of your tent at like 7 a.m. because you would cook if you didn't. So you'd get out, and I mean, a music festival is a music festival. You know, you're not feeling the greatest the next morning ever, any morning, and you get up and we would just lay under the easy ups in the middle, like trying our hardest.
Your mornings are your nights.
Yeah.
And your nights are your mornings. Like, I found my day really truly started at about 5 to 6.
Yeah.
And you'd go to bed at 4.
Yeah.
And you would sleep till 2. It was really ass backwards, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like,
no.
It was you don't know until you get there, and
If
know.
you haven't done a music festival, you need to do one. But that's another thing that COVID is hurting. And actually, you know what's really sad this year? Oh man, they got just such bad luck. They moved. They had to cancel last year because of COVID.
Yep.
Which is a big undertaking to cancel something so huge, right?
What happened?
Well, no, but so
yeah. So I know they moved to September.
No, but that was like, so I'm talking about 2020. Like, they canceled 2020 because it was COVID. Nothing was going on, right? Okay. They couldn't do it then, so they understood that.
Yep.
But then they said they're going to be back in 2021. They got to early 2021, kind of saw the outlook of what COVID was doing, and said, okay, we're going to shift from June to September, hoping that things get a little bit better, which they were. Or at least in the states thought things were getting better. I mean, they're still posting crazy case numbers, but they were going ahead with it anyways. And then that big hurricane hit the Gulf Coast and moved up through Tennessee, literally the weekend that they were having the Bonnaroo that they had moved.
So they just got rained. You just got rained on.
So it got the festival hadn't even started yet, but they had moved everything in. They had everything set up. People had their tickets and their cars loaded. People were driving to Bonnaroo from all around the country, and like the day before they had to cancel it because the grounds were literally under like 2 feet of water.
Holy!
Imagine canceling something like that. There was probably going to be 120,000 people there.
This farm that it's on is only for Bonnaroo.
Basically, yeah. The guy who owns it, or the people that own it, are. I mean, I don't know what they do with it the rest of the.
I don't think they do anything. I think some of those stages, the 2 permanent ones, the big ones, they stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they prep that thing all year round in the warm seasons to get ready.
I wonder what something like that is worth in the real estate world.
Oh my god.
Like the Bonnaroo farm. Like, what if that guy one day was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Let's list the Bonnaroo farm. It's huge.
I think there would just be subjective value on the fact that it was the Bonnaroo farm.
You're right.
Because it's a famous enough music festival now. Like, it's up there with Coachella and Burning Man.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. If you're wondering about Bonnaroo, it's as big or bigger than Coachella, and Coachella is the one that everybody knows that's in California.
But even if you haven't heard of it, there's a reason Paul McCartney's played there. And there's a reason Eminem's gone there. Right. And there's a reason that all these big artists that we named have played this place. It's not because it's a small venue.
I had tickets to Lollapalooza in 2020.
Oh, good.
And got canceled. Yeah, we couldn't go.
The only thing that would take away the experience of Lollapalooza or Osheaga or any of those is you have to stay in a hotel at night.
I know. It's a different experience.
It's a different experience. Yeah. Like, I kind of like the roughing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But as we get older, and that's what I find, it's like...
I'll get an RV.
Maybe in VIP camping or in an RV or something with air conditioning or...
Have you ever heard of the Party Like a Rockstar pass?
Yes.
It's $8,000 a ticket.
Oh my God.
It might actually be worth it. So $8,000, they pick you up in a limo at the airport. They drive you into Bonnaroo in your own wooded area, like the only wooded area in all of Manchester, Tennessee. There's no trees. And if there is a tree, literally the shadow of the tree is outlined by humans that are sleeping in that shadow of the tree. Yes. It's hilarious. There's like a actual tree-shaped shadow of humans when you're there because everyone's just trying to get shade because the daytime is a little miserable. But so anyways, you get picked up by a limo. You're driven in. You get dropped off at your own RV in the woods with your own sous chef on site that cooks your meals for you.
Oh my God.
You have your own golf cart with a driver that drives you to your shows, and all shows you're allowed to watch on stage.
Oh, so that's where all the people that are on stage
Yeah.
And side stage and
Yeah.
everything are coming from. The sound wouldn't be very good up there on stage.
No, but
The experience would be cool.
You also get to watch some pretty awesome bands play
the experience
right
would
on
be
the
cool.
side.
And I would imagine you probably get to like meet and greet some of these people too if they're.
But if you had the money to spend, it's kind of a like cool once in a lifetime experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like to have your own chef and all this. I know somebody that went to Bonnaroo and flew in on a helicopter. He like landed on the grounds in a helicopter.
Oh my God.
Just get out of the way. I'm landing. I'm here. We drove in in a U-Haul. We rented a U-Haul from Windsor and drove in, and we slept like sardines in the U-Haul.
always drove in my Vans, like big comfy, like 1980s van.
Yeah.
You know, one of those conversion vans that had like the back folded down into a bed.
Yeah, yeah.
Captain's chairs, and you could put tables in it and stuff. That was cool.
So quickly, now because you don't have Bonnaroo, you do. What do you call it? Oh
God, yeah, this is cool. So, yeah.
So desperate.
Last year, 2020, we got to the summertime, and friends of mine own a house on Cabana with this huge backyard, like a park-like backyard, and so I came up with the name Cabanaroo. Not Bonnaroo, but Cabanaroo. And we set up this huge, like, well, not huge, but huge for us.
Yeah.
Festival in their backyard, and we put up all our tents, and we.
You have live music?
Oh yeah, well, I play, and all of our buddies who play would get up on stage and play music. But the rest of it, this is cool. The rest of what we would do, one of our friends, Nick, would basically poll everybody in the group, and I think there was probably 30 or 40 of us, and ask us each to pick 2 bands and pick 4 or 5 songs each from those bands, and he curates an entire playlist, and that playlist, and then he writes it all down on a set list, his wife, and she like makes a huge set list down with what bands are playing on this playlist. And then that's the music that'll play throughout the day. So you'll know when certain bands are coming up. And
oh, that's hilarious. So is it just audio, or does he have like live shows on like a projector?
Just audio. I think
live shows on a projector would
we'll
be
get
cool.
there. We'll get there. Because this year we did Big Red Bonnaroo at our friend's place, their new acreage out between like Leamington and Kingsville. They were both different experiences. Big Red Bonnaroo felt more festival-like because you were out in the middle of nowhere.
Next thing you know, you're selling tickets and you actually have a music festival.
Yeah. So that's the funny thing. As we all get these properties in the city, you know, like our friends on Cabana got that a few years ago, and these guys out in near Leamington got it like last year, just last year. We're finding ways to make these things happen at home, and it's fun.
Take the barn and make a scare house for Halloween.
So we were trying to come up with topics for this podcast today, and I think one of the things that we all agreed on was it's October now, and we're getting closer to Halloween, and maybe we can talk about some like haunted housey type things. And sort of touch on maybe what we think the value, how you would value something that's like the Amityville house, or I don't know what other like famous haunted places.
The Amityville, Addams Family, like any of those, like Cabin in the Woods, all those things. I'm gonna pull up.
Do we have a lot of haunted houses, like in Windsor and Essex County? Like, are there haunted places? I don't know enough. I'm not from here, but are there
have you heard of Texas Road?
Yeah, my wife told
that's
me
the
about
only
that.
thing that I kind of like.
What's the story with Texas Road?
There's been a lot. So apparently, there's recent ones and later ones, but there's a cemetery at the end. Have you ever been there?
No.
So if you go
I've been on Texas Road, like showing houses, but I haven't been to this.
So if you go down the road, eventually it turns into a dirt road, and then eventually it hits a dead end. And at the dead end, people park their cars, and then you go into these woods. In the woods, there's like a little bridge that goes over, and that goes into a cemetery in the woods.
Oh, good. So this is like full on.
So
haunted.
I think all the stories were made, and I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the stories were all made along the way because people had this creepy area where there's like a thing in the wood. And I remember going there, and there's like cages in the woods for some reason. There's
something about like, what did somebody tell me once? That there was like, if you go on a certain stretch of it, you'd see like a light. You'd see like a headlight, or you'd see like a train light or something.
Let me see here.
Shining down the road, and it was supposed to be like a ghost train or something.
Texas Road story. Stories of Texas Road, Amherstburg, Ontario. There's been a lot, and it was always like a fun thing to do when you're like a teenager. You're like, I'm gonna take you on a date. We're going to Texas Road. Me and my girlfriend are planning on going. Yeah, see, this is a date. On going to Texas Road. Like, I got you, honey. Hold my hand. This is gonna be just fine. To Texas Road, and we're seeing if people want to join. Oh my God, this isn't a date. Have fun. The lights and power. Oh, this actually happened. One time we went there, we came running back because the scariest part of Texas Road to me is you park your cars and you walk 15 minutes into these woods, and when you have to go back, now you're walking back to anybody who came in after you knowing you're in there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you're coming back. I think it's scarier just the weirdos and the people that pull in behind you and they see your cars and they know you're in there. So now I'm coming back to people who are coming in, and I'm like, you better not fucking mess with me. Like I'm worried they're going to jump out and scare us, or they're actually crazy people. Like, who knows? So that's the scariest part to me. And one time we come running back and we're full of adrenaline and we're like, oh, this is crazy. Everyone's getting in their cars. Legitimately, one of us locked our keys in our car.
Oh, no.
And we ended up having to call a tow truck company. And we were sitting at the dead end of Texas Road for about an hour and a half. That legitimately happened. That was crazy. So yeah, I'm not really getting like stories here.
That's okay.
But like one person did say here, we did once pull into the cemetery at 11:55, lost all lights and power in the car for at least 5 minutes. Have fun. No explanation why this happened. I think everybody's got their story.
Okay, so the question then is, let's relate this to the real estate world for a second, because we are a Realtors for Life podcast. And does something like that affect the value of homes around that area?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it depends on the person and the people that are like.
But it doesn't matter. When you say it depends on the person, what that means is there's a giant group of people in the population that just would not consider buying a home in that area, which does fully affect the value.
You've sold 2 houses now, backing on, and I've done many, and I've had the same issue, backing onto a cemetery.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Yeah.
It's a tough sell, because some people, and you have your cliche real estate line. Well, they're the quietest neighbors,
rear neighbors in the world.
Quietest neighbors in town. And then someone's like, that's really weird. There are people that, whether it's religious beliefs or just superstition. I think superstition is the biggest one.
Well, I think cultural things play into it huge too, though, right? Like, it's a cult. Like, for a lot of people in certain cultures, like, it's, to live on a cemetery is not even an option. Like, it's because that's a sacred thing. It's separate from what they. Yeah,
I'd say when it comes to the stigma of backing onto a cemetery, there's a lot of people that have a big superstition about that. You saw it. I mean, one of your biggest complaints when you had that listing on Lillian was it backs onto a cemetery, and it just creeps people out.
Yep.
And I personally, I don't think it would bother me. I think there would always be like this kind of weird feeling that like, you know, your friends would joke with you and like you kind of creep yourself out just getting in your head.
Well,
But
like you said, some people care and some people don't. But no matter what,
if enough people care,
affects the value of the home, because you will get less offers on the home. You'll have less interest, and that equates to less dollars when it comes time to sell. I think one of the word that you used that is the main point of this is stigma. Stigma is one of those things that it's not a completely perfect number that you can write down. And stigma applies to anything that could affect the value of a home that isn't
could
tangible.
be just someone who passed away.
Right. It's not right. Exactly.
Someone used to grow drugs in that home. I mean, the drug thing can also relate to actual house issues with moisture and all that. But just the thought of there was a crime committed, or somebody had just peacefully passed away. Some people just aren't comfortable with that, and that's why it needs to be disclosed. But it is funny how a lot of this value is just based on people's superstitions and the stigma on.
That just shows you in the real estate world that you can measure something objectively all you want, but one of the biggest factors when it comes to purchasing real estate is the buyer's subjective value that they place on that property or on that house themselves, right? So you can't tell somebody what they have to spend on a home. You can give them every single piece of information objectively that you can to say, this is what we determine the house to be worth. And that person, what if mom and dad live 3 doors down?
Right.
And they don't want to lose that house, and there's 15 other people writing offers and interest in that house. That person might bid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more than they need to make sure that they end up being the one who gets that house. Right? So that's fully subjective, and they consider that, I guess, not an arm's length transaction, which means it's, close to home. And you shouldn't, technically, if you had all the facts when you were researching these homes, you shouldn't even be using a home like that, selling like that, as a comparable.
Right.
But unfortunately, we don't have all those facts when we're looking up and researching these homes in these areas for clients. We don't know. We just see that house sold for this many dollars, and then that could affect the value of the home 2 doors down from it on the next sale, and so on until there's 10 sales that are all based off of that one.
It can be the smallest thing, from like they had a small fire in the back of the house.
Right.
But it's all been remedied. Nothing's wrong anymore. No fire will happen. But because a fire had happened, people are out.
That's an interesting thing that I think we've all dealt with at one time or another. And I have had a few clients get scared off by a previous fire that's happened in a home. And I think it's something worth talking about, because when a fire happens, whether it's a total loss or it's even just a small part of the home, I think what often happens is that home is renovated to a point where it's
stronger
in
than
way
before.
better condition than it was pre-fire.
I've seen many houses and no houses that are in, like, let's say it's an old Walkerville home, and I'll walk in and it feels like a modern brand new home, and inspector will go up in the rafters in the attic and they'll say, this is all brand new structure, this is solid, it's like a brand new construction.
Yeah.
And it's because they had a fire. And people are like, oh, it had a fire, I don't think I'm interested. And I get it. People are worried that if there's structural damage. But when the insurance companies get involved and come back in, they want it back to the state it was in before. But they're using newer materials in today's world that are better than some of the materials. Arguably, sometimes not, but some of the materials they used in construction 50 to 100 years ago sometimes are better. But
things that would be better for sure would be like electrical systems and plumbing and stuff that would be, right?
And just the engineering to some things now are more to code in today's times. They hold the load to what we have in our homes. But I think there are certain times where, like, let's say a house is flooded. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, well, I don't want to buy a house that's flooded. Well, because it flooded, these people put a backflow valve, sump pump, waterproof the whole basement, and it's better than half the houses you're going to go see. Because it flooded, they remedied this home. And sometimes that's not the case, but just because it's flooded doesn't mean it's not a home that you bid on. It just depends on how they remedy the issue and to what extent. And if sometimes it's like Fort Knox, people get so paranoid about flooding again, they spend a ton of time. I've seen people
that you had a house on Reedmere that
had six sump pumps,
six
two
sump pumps.
backflow valves, fully wrapped in the basement. And one of our issues was, your house had flooded. I'm not interested.
Right.
The house has 6 sump pumps, 2 backflow valves, and it's fully
it had
water.
French drains all around the house on the outside.
Oh, it was the driest house in the neighborhood, but somebody had that stigma.
How? This is a question worth asking, and I think a question, a topic that clients will always bring up, whether it's a fire or it's been a flood or it's been any other issue. How does that potentially affect the insurance companies that they will then have to go to get insurance for that home? If that insurance company knows, this house is previously flooded, or this house previously had a fire, what problems do they run into?
So a lot of the times, if a house is previously flooded, if it's in a area that has a lot of claims for flood, in say a flood prone zone, you can still get insurance on the home, but they will sometimes come in and turn you away from any kind of flood protection. Yeah. So they'll say, look, you're in a flood zone. We will insure this home, but we're not able to give you flood protection on this home. Or it might be limited up to $5,000, or it might be a smaller thing.
If you're in like a floodplain or something
then the companies that will give you that insurance is going to be a higher premium, most likely. It's same thing with knob and tube. Most insurance companies want knob and tube electrical to be removed, but there are insurance companies that will insure it, and usually there's a higher premium to be paid.
What about fire? Like, does it matter? Because fire is not typically something that will reoccur in the home, especially if it's been completely renovated. Would an insurance company be worried about that for the second go around?
I actually don't know 100%, but I'm going to guess no.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess no, because they'll probably see the history on the home, that it was covered. Another insurance company took care of it. They may send an inspector out if they're really that worried about it. But I've sold homes that have had previous fires. I sold a home recently that had a car drive right through the front window, and the house burned down. And they had no issues with getting refinanced because the house was essentially newer and better. Their insurance could have arguably been less because of the work that was updated inside. But I don't know every insurance company's policy, so I don't know 100%. But I think fire is one of those ones that is a one-time occurrence. It's not like you're in a fire-prone neighborhood.
No. I think
it's more the electrical services and things that they're worried about that could cause the fire.
I think this is an important thing to talk about, because in the age of, again, no conditions in these offers to be competitive, you have to satisfy these conditions ahead of time. Didn't there used to be insurance condition offers that said, you could take this offer, you could get a conditionally accepted offer, you could take it to your insurance company, and you could make sure that you got
financing, inspection, insurance were like the 3 primary. And insurance kind of phased out because a lot of people had the mindset, well, you can't sell an unsurable home. So if there ever ran into issues like that, it would somewhat void the deal.
Is that true? Like if
I think there's an argument there, and that the lawyers would have a fight. Both sides would have an argument, and I just don't want to ever have to go there.
No.
But I think each side has their argument. Like, 1, you should have done your due diligence.
Yep.
2 would be the other one saying, well, you can't sell a home if this isn't, it's unsurable, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because we ran into this recently with a home with Kitech Plumbing, which we talked about previously with Martin.
Yeah.
On one of our podcasts, but Kitech is a
it's slowly becoming like a knob and tube issue.
Right, it's a plumbing that was known to fail in various ways, and but insurance companies now, so there's Kitech anywhere between a house built 1997 to 2007, right? And there's a lot of it in Windsor. Like, there's a lot of it in South Windsor.
A lot of your raised ranches.
Yeah, a lot of raised ranches.
Same with East Windsor, has a lot of them.
Right.
Yeah. And honestly, just random houses still. Like, I'll go into a 1920s home and they updated it sometime during that time, and it's all Kitech.
And so, then it became a an issue for the buyers when they went to go get insurance, and literally none of the insurance companies that they called would take it on. None. In fact, they called the current insurance company that currently had insurance on that home with the seller, and they denied the new buyer's insurance because of that, even though they were currently insuring it at that point. So I think what we're going to see going forward, like you said, with things like knob and tube wiring and this Kitech plumbing, is less and less insurance companies are going to want to take on the risk of having these things. And so buyers just need to be aware that if the house does contain those systems, that they need to make a contingency plan. Okay, maybe I've got to make sure that I have the money to replace this completely, because I might not get insured.
And for those that don't know what Kitech is, or if you have Kitech, it's usually pretty easy to spot. It's not your newer PEX plumbing that you see that's like red and blue. It's typically like an orange and blue. It will say Kitech on it,
or it'll say Plumb Better.
Plumb Better's one. And what's wrong with it is it's lined with an aluminum, and the fittings are a brass, and the aluminum and the brass, I think, react together against each other. Well, and it causes it to swell, and it gets little blisters, and eventually those blisters and that swelling can cause it to expand and pop. And you could be at work right now, and if it expands and pops while you're at work, your basement could just be being flooded, and it could be happening in the walls. And the thing is, you can't see it, and you can't check it everywhere in the home. So insurance companies are starting to worry about flood damage, and they're obviously getting enough claims that we're unaware of. And I think at the beginning that they claim that like 1% of homes, even if that was true, 1% of homes is still a lot of homes. But I think as it's getting older, they're getting more and more cases of it. Going back really quickly to things, I had pulled up the Amityville Horror House.
Okay, so now Amityville, big horror movie, started in the 70s. And then they've made iterations of this movie all the way through till basically a couple of years ago. I think Ryan Reynolds was in like one of the newer ones. But this was a real story, but it was basically kind of adapted for Hollywood. But I think this was a real thing. I think this Amityville house is a...
Yeah, it is. It's a real thing. It says you can stay in it, apparently.
Oh, no, thank you.
Like right here, you can live in the Amityville Horror House. Yeah, no, thank you. And this here, the real Amityville Horror, chilling facts about the crime and haunted house. I actually don't know the whole backstory about this house, but it's going back to stigma. I wonder now if this house would, and I'm going to bet that this house may actually sell for more at this point.
Arguably worth more
because of its fame now.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's there's like a point where the stigma hurts the value of the home, but because it's been like dramatized into this big like iconic home, it's probably worth a fortune.
I bet it is. Yeah. Somebody
and there's
would buy
probably
it
some weirdo that lives in it because they're into that weird kinky
shit. Well, like
shit.
you just said, somebody could own this, or maybe somebody owns this right now and could
turn into an Airbnb. What a cool Airbnb.
100%, right?
I'm not gonna lie, if
I wouldn't go stay in it, but you can go all you want, man. I don't know how much I believe, but
I'd be open to do it, but I don't know if I ever could, because my wife would never stay at the Amityville Horror House unless I didn't tell her.
She rolls up and she's like, this house looks kind of familiar. You're like, no, we've never been here before, honey. It's fine. Yeah. It's just fine. It's just a beautiful old home.
I think that'd be the best thing, is to find a super haunted house, but tell nobody that you're going with. Like, let's say you're going to Niagara-on-the-Lake with friends. Google haunted houses, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Airbnbs, and like find one. Send everybody there. Don't tell them, and then after tell them, and see if they had any weird like.
That would really be the only way to. That would really be the only way to deal with it. I won't get into too many details on this, and I don't really know too many details. But one of my friends grew up in South Walkerville. And grew up in an old house in South Walkerville, and their whole family had crazy experiences in this house, and then eventually when they sort of had all moved out, but they still owned the house, and they were renting these houses to tenants. These tenants all had experiences in this house as well, without having any prior knowledge of events that had happened in this home. And they don't even like talking about it. That's how
Whoa.
much it, like, they won't get into details. They won't divulge any information about the events that happened to them because they don't like bringing it up. They don't like talking about it. And to me, like, I don't know how much I believe one way or the other.
Yeah.
These, ghost stories and these haunted things, but to me, the most poignant ones are things like that, where they're not bragging. They're not like, oh, I saw a ghost and I had this experience and this is what happened, and like, isn't that crazy? It's like, it was traumatizing enough to them at the time that when you ask them about it, they're like, like, I just don't want to talk about it.
Our office is in Walkerville, and it was built in 1900 on the dot. Okay?
By the way, that's this house that we're sitting in right now.
Yeah. 1900 on the dot. And I had an Airbnb on the second floor for about a year. And one of the gentlemen, and I was just like, okay, buddy, like, whatever. He wakes up and he said, is this house ever had issues with hauntings or anything like that? And I was like, no, but it was cool to hear. He said, I had a dream and woke up from this dream, and at the end of my bed was a man dressed in like 1920s clothes, and he said his name was Frank. And I'm thinking to myself, you're sleeping next to your wife. If you woke up and saw a man at the end of your bed and he said his name was Frank, you wouldn't think he's a ghost. You'd be like, there's a guy named Frank in my house. And so anyways, for whatever reason, he felt like this guy's name was Frank, and he felt like he knew it was a ghost, and I just blew it off and was like, whatever. But then I had another tenant who says, I want to ask you, is this house haunted? By any chance, does the name Francis ring a bell?
What?
Yeah. Francis.
Which is Frank.
I think.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, or close to it.
I'm pretty sure, the short form of Francis is Frank.
So she had some reason to believe that the name Francis had something to do with this home.
Whoa.
So I tried Googling the address and I couldn't find anything. But this house was built in 1900s. Some guy that slept here claims to have witnessed some guy named Frank standing and walking around up here. And then some woman brings up the name Francis. So that's weird.
Right. Is this all?
But is it a coincidence, or did they know each other? Are they messing with me?
I don't know. Though I guess the one thing it always comes down to for me, in the end, with all these stories, is it's always a whisper of a hint of something that somebody heard. Like, do you know what I mean? There's it's never concrete this or like.
But that's what makes it fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what always kind of keeps it.
Upstairs we had photos of guys dressed in like 1920s clothes.
Yeah.
Prohibition era.
Sure. So
and
that gets
so
into
he
your
probably
dreams.
went to sleep and dreamt something and thought he saw something. But I swear to God, one day if I'm renovating this house and I tear down a wall and there's like something about Frank or Francis, I'm a true believer for the rest of my life.
100%.
Like, there's no way he would know. So
100%.
If Frank or Francis comes up one more time, I'm forever a believer.
Is this house, is this considered
I don't think
historic?
So. I don't think so. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's just vinyl siding.
Maybe.
And the architecture is not the same as some of the other houses. But
that's an interesting thing, hey? Because there's a whole different set of rules if you own something that has a historic designation.
You're very limited on the exterior and the interior.
Yep.
I get it, and I'm glad that kind of thing exists.
Yeah, keeps
cool.
Well, because Walkerville is such a cool neighborhood,
yeah.
And I bet you there's tons of historic homes and buildings and stuff in this Walkerville neighborhood that really have to abide by
There's homes in this neighborhood that claim to have had Henry Ford.
Yeah.
Be at.
Well, where's the Monmouth townhomes were like where all the
El Capone.
the workers and everything stayed though, right? Was it the brewery or the distillery?
Yeah.
Right.
I went to Walkerville High School, and I got a hold of the janitor's keys on a weekend because I was doing backstage, and we went to this panel in the wall that we heard was how you access the tunnels, and I tried every key on the keychain, and I found it, and it opened, and me and like 3 or 4 other people, if they're watching this, they know who they are. I'm not going to say any names. I think we put our initials down on the wall down there, and when we went down, there was like this panel, and you went in it, and it was a small room with wooden doors, like hatch doors.
Are we talking like, is this prohibition, like rum running tunnels?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
baby.
we're in Walkerville. We go in this little hatch, and it was like a staircase coming down in the school. And at the back of the staircase, like where one of the side doors of the school is, there's like these squared hatches. And we knew that this was a way in. We've been told, because I think they actually had their rifle team practices down in these tunnels, so back in the day. So anyways, we open this hatch, and in this hatch there's like old wooden doors like you'd see in an outside like storm entrance to like a basement. And we went down in there, and all the lights are on, and there's plumbing. So obviously the janitor has to go down there for plumbing and electrical, and it's all underneath the school. But then you see this dark hallway with no lights. So we start following it down, and we got our cell phone lights on and everything, and we find this room. And it's a room maybe 2 or 3 times the size of this room, and it has compressed barrels of hay. They were just like metal barrels, but then there was like hay completely compressed inside of them. And I found out from my history teacher that's the old rifle room. Then that was where they shot it, and they still have the targets down there that they would shoot at down there. But past that, there's tunnels, and we stopped because it started getting full of water, like ankle deep.
Yeah.
And we were not dressed to be going through these tunnels, so we stopped, and we didn't know like if there was live electrical and we're walking through water. We don't know. So like rats could be in there, so we didn't go any further.
Rats are in there.
Yeah. So these tunnels apparently connect all the way to Williston Manor, to some of the homes in Walkerville, all the way down to the waterfront, where they would run all this stuff. And I know a friend that has a house in Walkerville that has a door in the basement that's completely cemented off, and it's illegal for them to open that door open because it's actual access to the tunnels, and it's illegal for them to access that because then they can get under other people's homes and they can and do things. So yeah, there's some really crazy history right below us that we aren't even aware of.
Imagine if you found a tunnel that like went under the Detroit River and like into the
who knows?
into
I
the
don't
States.
know. I don't. We
Right?
we went to the distillery for a wedding once, and we poked around a little bit, and we found another entrance to the tunnels, and one of the waiting staff said, yes, that is another entrance to the tunnels. So those tunnels expand all through here. I'm sure there's a map or something you could find. But some of these houses have some crazy history that I bet you the people that live in them have no freaking clue. Like, you could be sitting in a spot where some very famous historical person was sitting. It's a very cool area that way.
This, I consider Walkerville to be kind of a new downtown for Windsor, right? Like the downtown area of this city has really
nice. It's nice and it's not. It's nice and it's not. I grew up in here in this area, so I feel like it's being invaded somewhat. And like the restaurants that used to be kind of more casual hangout have become more pub club style, and it's almost too clubby. But I do love that it's rejuvenated the area and it's brought life to the area, and I love that they're investing in the area, and I love that other people are investing in it, and they're bringing back these buildings and restoring them to keep this neighborhood something special. But I also worry that it's going to be like commercialized to a point where it's going to take away from it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think they're being really careful with what they bring in here and how they do it. There's another area of the city that we've really started enjoying, like my wife and my friends and I, Ford City.
Yeah.
I think they're finally really actually starting to kind of gentrify that area a little bit, and you know, they've got some really cool, there's a place called Pressure Drop. Yeah. It's like a grass area between 2 buildings, and they've got picnic tables. They bring a DJ out there, and you can order food from the surrounding restaurants like Grand Cantina, and there's a couple other, and they bring it to your table.
Come on.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like these are things that I think Windsor needs to start seeing more of, and I don't just mean bars and places you can drink, but I think we really need to start seeing a little bit more revitalization, and we're starting to see it, but not necessarily in the downtown area. We're seeing it in these little pockets in different areas of the city.
I know.
Because
I mean,
it's
look
like
at-
almost like people are just writing off downtown, and they're like,
You
we
look
don't
at
want to
Erie
build
Street,
something there.
Ottawa Street, Troulard, Wyandotte, Walkerville area, and even Riverside, Wyandotte area
Yep.
are all turned into these like little micro hotspots.
Yeah.
And Tecumseh's seeing a big boost right now.
Yeah, they are.
And I think everybody's kind of getting their own little niche markets. I mean, even look at Forest Glade with like Parks and Rec in that area, and they're like trying to get, you know, their own little complex going of trendy things. And I like it.
I do too. I think
like the
it's
vibes.
great.
But I just wish people could.
Do you think that having Detroit right there kind of detracted from the revitalization of the downtown area of Windsor? Because when they revitalized downtown Detroit, it became, to me, it's like a mini New York. Like
Right.
you go there and they've got like shops and
Right.
new cute restaurants and little hidden lanes and a
the-
skating rink and a
But then
and
the
a
reason Windsor
lodge.
is primarily clubs and pubs downtown is because a big driving factor is the 19, 20-year-old kids that can't drink in the States
Oh,
yet. Come here, and it's kind of their hot spot, and there's money to be made. So a lot of businesses have been opened up to make the clubs and the pubs, and that's why there's a lot of that downtown. But then it drives away businesses because they're worried about
This
being
drinking, fighting, young
vandalism, things like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, this is the whole long topic on its own.
There's a couple places now in downtown. We ride our bikes down there. But do you know where Maiden Lane is?
Yeah.
Like right by Acapulco
Yeah.
Delight.
Yeah. You were talking about this the other day
on
too.
Pelisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new, so there's Maiden Lane and then Maiden Lane. I think it's like Maiden Lane Wine and Spirits. It's like a beautiful new cocktail bar, and they make unbelievable drinks. And it's
There's your plug.
Yeah, there you go, Maiden Lane. But really, really, really cool spot. We've been a couple times in the last couple of weeks. You can sit outside in this lane that cars can't drive up and down anymore. There's a cute little boutique shop.
I think there's a lot of
Whiskey
streets.
Jacks on there.
A lot of streets in Windsor that I think should just
Yeah,
cut it.
Yeah, I think there's hopefully some plans.
Erie Street would be really cool if they just said no more cars from this street to this street.
Yeah.
Like, I think those types of areas would be really, really cool.
Yeah, as long as you're not, and I don't think you would be in Windsor, as long as you're not like really interrupting the flow of traffic by blocking off a street like that all of a sudden. Because I think there's enough east-west streets
Yeah, you
in
got
Windsor
Giles,
where,
you got Giles and Ottawa
right?
and all
Exactly.
those things. Like,
Do you need Erie to be a main?
I feel like if you cut off just like maybe 5 or 6 blocks,
Yeah.
you could. I don't think Erie's that busy. It would hurt things too
I
much.
agree.
People would just learn to navigate around it. But I think it would really help areas like that. We're gonna end it there for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was...
But next week I think we're gonna have Jill on, or the next podcast we're gonna have Jill on, so that'll be fun.
Perfect.
And thank you, everybody.
Have a happy October, and
Yeah.
we'll be back in a couple weeks.
Sweet.